My name is Dr. Mary Neal, and I never imagined my life would take the turn it did on that fateful day. It started out as a thrilling adventure. I had joined a group of friends for a kayaking trip in the beautiful rivers of South America. The setting was picture perfect. Lush greenery surrounded us. The sun sparkled on the rushing water, and the air was alive with the sounds of the forest. As an orthopedic surgeon, I was always focused and meticulous in everything I did. But this trip was meant to be an escape, a chance to reconnect with nature and embrace the excitement of the moment. The river was both mesmerizing and intimidating, with its twists and turns and the occasional roar of rapids ahead. I had kayaked before, but this river was different. Its current was swift, its rocks jagged, and its beauty hid the danger lurking beneath the surface. Still, I felt prepared, confident even. I paddled with my friends, laughter and shouts echoing across the water as we navigated the challenges together. As we approached a narrow stretch of the river, the current grew stronger. The water churned and foamed as it funneled through a tight gap between towering rocks. My heart raced, but I was determined to push through. With every stroke of the paddle, I felt the power of the river pulling me forward, its force undeniable. And then it happened. In an instant, my kayak tipped. The force of the water slammed me against a submerged rock, pinning me beneath the surface. I struggled, clawing at the sides of my kayak, desperate to free myself. The icy water rushed over me, stealing my breath and clouding my vision. I could hear the muffled shouts of my friends above the surface, their panic evident even through the roar of the river. Time seemed to slow. Every second stretched into an eternity as I fought against the unyielding grip of the current. My lungs burned, screaming for air, but there was none to be found. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. I was drowning. This was it. My life was slipping away, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. I wanted to panic, to scream, to fight harder, but instead, a strange calm began to wash over me. My struggles ceased, and I felt myself surrender to the inevitable. It was as though a switch had been flipped, and I let go, not just physically, but emotionally and spiritually. In that moment of surrender, everything changed. The icy cold of the water, the pressure of the current, the fear gripping my heart, all of it disappeared. I was no longer in the river. I was somewhere else entirely, a place that defied description. It was as though I had been lifted out of my body and into a realm that was more vivid, more real than anything I had ever experienced. I hovered above the river, watching the frantic efforts of my friends as they tried to reach me. Their faces were pale with fear, their voices hoarse from shouting my name. But I wasn't afraid anymore. I wasn't in pain. I felt an overwhelming sense of peace, as though every worry, every doubt, and every ounce of fear I had ever known had been stripped away. As I turned away from the scene below, I noticed a light in the distance. It wasn't just any light. It was alive, pulsing with warmth and love. It drew me in, beckoning me to come closer. I felt myself moving toward it, not with my legs or any physical effort, but as though I were being carried by a gentle current. The closer I came, the more I felt an indescribable sense of belonging, as though I were returning to a home I had long forgotten. The light enveloped me, its radiance brighter than the sun, yet not blinding. It was as though I could feel the light on every level of my being, my mind, my heart, my very soul. In its presence, I felt completely known and completely loved, as though every part of me, even the parts I had hidden away, was accepted without judgment. It was then that I realized I wasn't alone. There were beings in the light, figures that radiated the same love and warmth as the light itself. They didn't have distinct features or physical forms as we know them, but I recognized them immediately. They were my loved ones, friends and family who had passed on before me. I could feel their joy at seeing me, their love wrapping around me like a warm embrace. They didn't speak with words, but their presence communicated everything I needed to know. I was safe, I was loved, and I was exactly where I was meant to be. As I stood there, surrounded by the light and the presence of these beings, I felt a connection that went beyond anything I had ever experienced on Earth. It was as though every soul, every life, was intertwined, forming a vast and intricate web of love and purpose. The beauty of it brought tears to my eyes, not tears of sadness, but of awe and gratitude. In that moment, I realized that death wasn't the end. It was a transition, a doorway into something far greater than I could have ever imagined. I felt as though I had stepped into the very essence of life itself, a place where everything made sense and where love was the foundation of all existence. I wanted to stay there forever, to bask in the warmth and beauty of that realm. But deep down, I knew this was just the beginning of my journey. There was more to see, more to understand, and more to share. I didn't know it yet, but what I was about to experience would change my life and the lives of countless others forever. As I stood in that radiant realm, surrounded by the overwhelming presence of love and light, I felt a sense of clarity unlike anything I had ever known. The beings who greeted me radiated warmth and familiarity, though they didn't speak in words. Their communication was deeper, more profound, as though they were speaking directly to my soul. I recognized them immediately as loved ones who had passed before me, my grandmother, a childhood friend, and even relatives I had never met in life, but somehow knew here. They didn't need to tell me they were happy to see me. Their joy was palpable, flowing from them like an endless current of love. They guided me deeper into this place, and with each step, I felt layers of earthly concerns falling away. Worries about work, relationships, and responsibilities faded into nothingness. What mattered here was connection, pure, unfiltered, and eternal. As I moved further, I began to notice something incredible. The space around me seemed alive with energy, not chaotic, but perfectly harmonious. I saw threads of light weaving through the air, connecting me to everything and everyone. These threads pulsed with a vibrant energy, as though carrying the essence of life itself. Each thread represented a connection, a relationship, an act of kindness, a moment of love shared between souls. I was shown how these connections extended far beyond what I could comprehend on Earth. I saw how a simple act of compassion, something as small as a kind word or a helping hand, could ripple outward, touching lives in ways I had never imagined. It was like watching the most intricate and beautiful tapestry unfold before my eyes, each thread representing the ways in which our lives intertwine. What struck me most was the realization that even the smallest interactions mattered. The moments I thought were insignificant, smiling at a stranger, offering words of encouragement, were illuminated as profound acts of love that had lasting effects. I was shown how these moments linked me to others, creating a web of connection that spanned across time and space. It was humbling to see how my choices had shaped not just my life, but the lives of those around me. The beings around me encouraged me to look closer, and as I did, I was shown a review of my life. It wasn't like a judgment. There was no condemnation, no harsh criticism. Instead, it was as though my life was being laid out before me like a story, one that was being told with infinite love and understanding. I saw the times when I had made mistakes, when I had acted out of anger or fear, but these moments weren't highlighted to shame me. Instead, they were opportunities to learn, to see how I could have chosen differently. What amazed me was how every choice, every action seemed to create a ripple effect. I was shown moments I had forgotten, like the time I had comforted a young patient after a difficult surgery. In the grand scheme of things, it had seemed like such a small gesture at the time. But here, I saw how that moment had given the patient strength, how it had inspired them to face their challenges with courage. That courage had, in turn, impacted the people around them, creating ripples of positivity that spread far beyond what I could have imagined. I also saw the moments when I had been unkind or impatient. These were difficult to watch, but they were presented with such love and understanding that I didn't feel judged, only encouraged to grow. I saw how my words and actions, even in those moments of frustration, had affected others. But I also saw how those connections, though strained, could be healed through forgiveness and love. It was as though I was being gently reminded of the power I had to mend the threads I had unintentionally frayed. As I continued to witness these connections, I began to understand something profound. None of us are isolated. We are all part of an intricate, divine design, woven together by the threads of love, compassion, and shared experience. The idea of being alone was an illusion. Even in our darkest moments, we are connected to others in ways we cannot see. Then, I felt the presence of something even greater, a force so vast and encompassing that it filled every part of me with awe. It was God. There were no words, no booming voice or physical form, yet I knew it was Him. His presence was pure love, a love so complete that it dissolved every fear, every doubt I had ever carried. In His presence, I felt utterly known and completely accepted. God didn't communicate with me in words, but through an understanding that flowed directly into my being. I was shown the purpose of life, not in a grand cosmic sense, but in a deeply personal way. Life was about connection, about learning to love more fully and live more authentically. It was about embracing our shared humanity and using our challenges to grow. I was also shown that the struggles we face in life are not meaningless. They are opportunities, gifts even, that allow us to deepen our understanding of love and compassion. The pain we endure, the trials we overcome, they all have a purpose, one that becomes clear when seen from this perspective. I understood that the moments I had once viewed as failures or setbacks were, in fact, some of the most important chapters of my life. As I stood in God's presence, surrounded by the web of connections that tied me to others, I felt a deep sense of gratitude. I saw the beauty of humanity, not in its perfection, but in its imperfections. Our flaws, our struggles, our efforts to love and be loved, they were all part of what made life so extraordinary. It was then that I realized I was being prepared for something. I had been shown these things not to stay in this beautiful realm, but to carry them back with me. I felt a gentle but firm push, as though I was being guided to return. I didn't want to leave. The thought of stepping away from this light, this love, was almost unbearable. But I understood that my journey wasn't over. I had more to do, more to learn, and more to share. My heart ached as I realized it was time to go. The beings who had greeted me surrounded me once more, their love giving me strength for what lay ahead. I felt God's presence remain with me, a reassurance that I would never be truly alone. As the light began to fade and the earthly world came into focus, I knew my life would never be the same. I had seen the truth of our connections, the beauty of our purpose, and the infinite love that awaits us on the other side. And I knew I had to share it. As the light around me began to dim and I felt myself being gently pulled back, I struggled with the thought of leaving. The realm I had entered was so filled with love and peace that returning to my earthly life seemed almost unimaginable. But as I prepared to leave, I was given a profound understanding. My time on earth was not yet over, and I still had a purpose to fulfill. I felt a deep sense of reassurance as God's presence remained with me. Though I was being sent back, I would not be alone. I was told that the lessons I had learned, the truths I had seen, were not just for me. They were meant to be shared. My life had been forever changed, and my mission was to bring that change to others, to help them see the beauty and meaning in their own lives. The transition was sudden and startling. One moment, I was surrounded by divine love and light. The next, I was gasping for air, my lungs burning as the cold reality of the river rushed back into my senses. I could hear my friends shouting, their voices frantic as they worked to resuscitate me. My body ached, every breath felt labored, but I was alive. The doctors later described my recovery as miraculous. By all accounts, I should not have survived the accident, let alone returned with full awareness and no lasting damage. But I knew that my return wasn't about defying medical odds. It was about the message I had been sent back to share. As I lay in the hospital bed, recovering from the physical ordeal, my mind remained fixated on what I had seen and felt. The connections, the love, the intricate design of our lives. It was all so clear, so vivid, I couldn't let it fade. When I finally regained my strength and began to share my story, I faced an unexpected challenge. How do you put something so profound, so otherworldly into words? How do you explain a love so complete that it dissolves every fear, or a web of connections so intricate it ties every soul together? I found myself stumbling, searching for ways to convey the depth of what I had experienced. At first, I shared my story only with close friends and family. Their reactions ranged from awe to disbelief. Some were deeply moved, while others struggled to reconcile my account with their understanding of the world. But the more I spoke, the more I realized that it wasn't my job to convince anyone. It was simply my job to share the truth as I had experienced it. One of the most powerful lessons I carried back was the understanding of how deeply we are all connected. I began to see these connections everywhere, in the way a kind word could lift someone's spirit, in the ripple effects of small acts of generosity, in the bonds that hold families and communities together, even in the face of hardship. The threads of light I had seen in the other realm weren't just metaphors. They were a reality that shaped our lives in ways most of us never realized. I started noticing how the choices I made each day either strengthened or weakened those connections. When I acted with love and compassion, the threads seemed to grow stronger, brighter. But when I gave in to anger, impatience, or selfishness, I could almost feel the fraying, the dimming of the light. This realization pushed me to live more intentionally, to approach every interaction with the awareness that it mattered. As I shared this perspective with others, I found that it resonated deeply. People began to reflect on their own lives, their own connections, and the ways they could bring more love and kindness into the world. It wasn't about grand gestures or monumental changes. It was about the small, everyday choices that shape the fabric of our lives. But the message wasn't always easy to share. I encountered skepticism, even ridicule, from those who couldn't accept the idea of life beyond death or the notion of divine connection. At times, it was disheartening. I wondered if I was failing in my mission, if the message was falling on deaf ears. But then I remembered the love and patience I had felt in the other realm. There was no rush, no urgency to force people to understand. The light I had seen wasn't about coercion, it was about invitation. As I continued to share my story, I began to see its impact in ways I hadn't anticipated. People started reaching out to me, sharing their own stories of loss, struggle, and moments of inexplicable grace. They told me how my experience had given them hope, how it had reminded them of the beauty and meaning in their own lives. Some began to mend broken relationships, inspired by the understanding that our connections are what truly matter. Others found the courage to face their fears, knowing that they were never truly alone. One of the most profound realizations I carried back was the understanding of how pain and struggle fit into the grand design. In the other realm, I had been shown that even the most difficult experiences had a purpose. They weren't punishments or meaningless trials. They were opportunities to grow, to deepen our understanding of love and compassion. This perspective changed the way I approached my own challenges. Instead of seeing them as obstacles, I began to see them as gifts, as chances to strengthen the connections that mattered most. The love I had felt in the other realm wasn't something that stayed behind when I returned. It came with me, infusing my life with a sense of purpose and peace. It didn't mean that life was suddenly easy or free from hardship, but it gave me a foundation to stand on, a light to guide me even in the darkest moments. As I continued to share my story, I realized that the most important part of my mission wasn't about convincing others of what I had seen. It was about helping them see the beauty and meaning in their own lives. The threads of connection, the infinite love that binds us all, it's not just something that exists in the next life. It's here, now, waiting for us to embrace it. The journey I had taken, the lessons I had learned, were never meant to be mine alone. They were meant to remind all of us of who we truly are, beings of light and love, deeply connected and capable of transforming the world through the simple, profound act of caring for one another. That is the truth I carry with me, the truth I hope to share for as long as I live. As my story began to reach more people, the ripple effects of sharing my experience became more apparent. Individuals from all walks of life, many of whom I had never met, started to reach out. Some wanted to share their own near-death experiences or moments when they felt an unexplainable connection to something greater. Others were grappling with grief, struggling to find meaning in loss, and hoped that my story might offer a glimmer of hope. Their messages were raw, emotional, and deeply personal, and each one reaffirmed the importance of what I had been sent back to do. What struck me most was how universal the desire for connection truly is. Across cultures, beliefs, and circumstances, people long for reassurance that their lives matter, that their struggles have meaning, and that the bonds they share with loved ones endure beyond this life. I felt humbled and deeply honored to offer a perspective that might ease their pain or inspire them to live more fully. But with this honor came a profound sense of responsibility. The love and truth I had experienced in the other realm were too vast, too transformative to be kept to myself. I had to continue sharing, even when it wasn't easy. One of the most challenging aspects of my journey was addressing the skepticism that inevitably arose. I understood it. As a scientist and a doctor, I had spent much of my life grounded in evidence-based reasoning. Before my experience, I might have been among the skeptics, questioning the validity of stories like mine. But what I had seen and felt was beyond logic or explanation. It was a truth so profound that it transcended any earthly framework. I approached these conversations with patience, knowing that belief isn't something that can be forced. Often I would remind people that they didn't need to take my word for it. Instead, I encouraged them to explore their own experiences, to look for the threads of connection and love that already existed in their lives. What kept me going, even in the face of doubt, were the moments when my story truly resonated with someone. I began to hear from people who had reconciled with estranged family members, inspired by the idea that our connections extend far beyond this life. Others found the courage to forgive both themselves and others, knowing that forgiveness strengthened the bonds of light and love that tied us all together. These were not small victories. They were profound transformations that echoed the truths I had been shown in the other realm. As I continued to share my story, I found myself reflecting more deeply on the purpose of my return. The message wasn't just about life after death. It was about life here and now. I began to understand that the love and light I had experienced weren't meant to be confined to the next life. They were meant to guide us in this one. The connections I had seen, the intricate web of relationships and actions that shaped our lives, were not abstract concepts. They were living, dynamic forces that we could nurture every day. I started to notice these connections more clearly in my own life. Simple moments, sharing a laugh with a friend, offering a kind word to a stranger, or sitting in quiet reflection, took on a new significance. Each interaction, no matter how small, felt like an opportunity to strengthen the threads of light that bound us all. And when I encountered challenges, I found myself approaching them with a sense of gratitude. Even the difficult moments were gifts, opportunities to grow and to deepen my understanding of love and compassion. The most profound realization of all was that the love I had felt in the other realm wasn't something I had to wait for. It was already here, woven into the fabric of our existence. We just had to choose to see it, to embrace it, and to share it with others. This realization transformed the way I lived. Instead of striving for perfection or worrying about outcomes, I began to focus on presence, on being fully engaged in each moment and bringing as much love as I could to whatever I was doing. As the years passed, the impact of my story continued to grow. I was invited to speak at conferences, places of worship, and community events, each opportunity a chance to share the lessons I had learned. But what touched me most were the quiet, personal conversations I had with people who felt seen, understood, and inspired by my words. It was in these moments that I felt the deepest sense of fulfillment, knowing that the love and light I had been shown were finding their way into the world. Reflecting on everything I had experienced, I realized that the most important lesson wasn't about what happens after we die. It was about how we choose to live. The connections we nurture, the love we share, and the compassion we extend to others are what truly matter. They are the threads that weave our lives into the divine tapestry I had glimpsed on the other side. As I continue this journey, I carry with me the certainty that we are never alone. We are surrounded by love, by connection, by a divine presence that guides us even in our darkest moments. And when our time on earth comes to an end, we will return to the light, embraced by the infinite love that has been with us all along. Until that day comes, my mission is clear: to live fully, to love deeply, and to remind others of the beauty and purpose that surround them every moment of their lives.